Hello and happy summer from your friends here at the Financial Advisor Group. Yeah, it's been an ugly start to 2022. There's no doubt about that, but we still want to wish you a happy summer, right? We'll get to our thoughts and sort of how we think things may look going forward and how we got to where we are. But the most important thing we'd say today, and we've said this before, this summer wasn't going to be fun, right? So we wanted you to do your best to not pay attention to this stuff and just enjoy summer. The truth is, right, it's hard to ignore the news these days and not pay attention to every headline every day telling about airport problems or gas prices going up or the issue of the day. But the key thing we'd say today is do your best to enjoy summer, and hopefully our thoughts will get you calmed a little bit more about this side of things, and you can just focus on enjoying things. I just got back from a trip to Ireland for 2 weeks, and it was phenomenal, right? We flew to Ireland, didn't have any plane problems, rented a car, didn't have any driving problems. Michelle might argue we had some driving problems, but didn't get into any accidents, drove on the wrong side of the road, everything went smoothly, right? And you won't hear that story on the news, right? You'll hear about the flights that were canceled or the luggage that's piled up, but you don't hear about the people who are out traveling and getting around okay. So understand that, right? The world, there are issues all over the place, right? And the start to this year was ugly. But we truthfully believe we've been here before, right? Markets have done this before. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind at this point in time. So we get it. It's an ugly start to 2022. What do we do now, right? First, we've said this over and over and over again. Stick to the plan, right? This happens. This is part of investing. Markets going through quote unquote now bear markets is something that actually happens about once every 4 years, right? So if you're investing for 10, 20, 30 years, you can expect once every 4 years to hit a bear market. The most important thing is most money that is made in investing is made during a bear market. You just don't realize it till down the road. The reason we say that is because the decisions you make during a bear market that set your success up for down the road, right? So we'll make a little analogy today to sort of how investing right now is a lot like planting trees. But keep in mind right now that behavior is the most important thing. Not are you picking the right stock, not do you own the right investments, but behavior is the most important part to investing at this point in time. And our goal is to make sure we make the right behavioral decisions at this point in time right now. Although not to lie, that can be very difficult to do, but that's our job, right? So when we get to sort of where we are, right? As we talked about before, man, it's been an ugly start to the year, right? So if we look at this and look at some charts historically, through the first half of the year, we're down about 21% is what this screen shows. Depending on which index you look at, it's all ugly, right? So call it 20, call it 25%. It really doesn't matter. Could it get worse? Sure, right? I think we don't want to act like everything's wonderful. This certainly could get worse, right? Inflation's still an issue. There's a chance of a recession coming. Do we think one's coming? Yeah, probably, right? We're due another recession at some point in the next, call it 12 to 24 months. But again, recessions are natural. They're part of the cycle. And this recession that's coming, in our view, will probably be very different, a much more shallow recession, not as deep. But let's not be intimidated by that word, right? The important thing is what happens now going forward. And if you look back historically, what you can see is this has happened before. This sounds sort of weird to say. This didn't even make the top 10 for worst 6-month periods going back the last 50 or so years. But if the important thing is what happens going forward, right? And what this chart shows is on average, 3 months later, the market's up about 6%. 6 months later, market's up about 15%. 1 year later, 26. You get the picture here. So if you can look out 3 years and 5 years from now, this is when planting seeds and making good investment decisions is so important, right? So if we think about that, we'll get back to is this analogy of planting seeds, right? Think about when you plant flowers. We don't plant flowers or trees or anything like that when the weather's gorgeous and hot like it is right now. We plant it in spring, right? Sometimes the weather's ugly. The sun's not out that much. It's cold. And what are we hoping? We're hoping, just like every year before, the weather's going to turn The weather will get better. And by planting that seed when things are ugly and the skies aren't as nice, that will bear the success down the road, right? We don't know that the sun's going to come up and summer's going to come. We just trust that it will. Why? Because it's happened for the last thousands of years, right? Think about how that's similar to investing, right? Right now, we can't guarantee you that markets are going to recover from here. But what we can tell you is that they always have, right? It's easy to say, well, this time is different, right? It's not going to this time. We can tell you, and we just showed you in that chart, is just like planting a tree takes optimism, right? That we know weather will get better. And we know planting this seed right now will bear fruit down the road. We think the same thing about investing today, right? That we've weathered this storm. Could it get worse? Sure. Just like in spring, you don't need the perfect day to plant. You may plant that seed and weather gets worse for a month, but 6 months, 12 months down the road, it will bear fruit. That's our view of the markets today, right? It could get worse in the short term, but I think it's important now when we look forward that this market's set up for success over the next 1, 2, 3, 5-year timeframes. So that's the most important thing when we make this analogy to planting a tree, is that we're optimistic the sun will come up and summer will come. When we plant a seed, same thing with the markets, right? We're optimistic that things will get better, maybe rocky for a little while still, but we think we're optimistic at some point things will get better within the next couple months. And we need to make sure that you're there to take advantage of that, even though that's a hard thing to do right now. To dig into a little bit more detail of sort of how are we here, what's going on, right? One thing we point out is you're starting to see that markets are starting to get fairly valued, right? What this chart shows is historically, on average, the value, the PE ratio, which sort of tells you is the market overvalued or undervalued. The average value of the market for the last 25 years, let's call it, is about 17, right? And that's you take the price of a company divided by its earnings. How well is it doing? Well, over the past couple of years, right, the market's been quote unquote expensive, right? For the first time in a while, we now see that the market is affordable. The market is becoming more of a value. That's the best time to buy, right? Not the best time to run away, but the best time to run towards it. So yes, this is ugly, but you're starting to see some opportunities emerge. Second, inflation, right? Boy, it's the word of the day, right? Who doesn't see inflation every day? Who doesn't deal with inflation every day? Who doesn't hear about it on the news every day? Inflation's here, right? The hard part is it has been so long since we've seen anything like this inflation-wise, right? It's been, let's call it 30 years since any inflation like this has come around. In fact, 40 to 50 years since we've seen inflation this high. It's not fun. For someone my age, right? I've never seen inflation like this before, and it's not fun. What we would argue, though, is looking forward, we do think inflation is showing signs of being at or near peak, right? You're starting to see little signs of it rolling over. Even if you look at things like gas prices at the pump today, gas prices are down 20, 30, 40 cents a gallon from their peak just a couple weeks ago, right? Now that could come back up because there's obviously a lot going on in the oil world. But in our view, looking forward 6 months, 12 months from now, you're starting to see inflationary signs ease a little bit. If that can happen and persist, we do think this market can calm itself back down, right? The other point, and I think this is important, is we are horrible predictors as people as to what the market's going to do, right? This chart, a little bit noisy, but what you can see here is the dots up top here show consumer confidence. That's what this chart is plotting. The dots up top here show the highest consumer confidence numbers over the last 50 years, let's call it, right? And if you look, the 8 peaks, the 8 times we felt the best about the world, the best about our economy, the market only averaged 4% over the next 12 months, right? So when we feel the most optimistic, everything looks great, the market goes up about 4% in the next 12 months. What about when we feel the worst, right? If you look back historically, when consumer confidence is the lowest it's been, the return going forward on average has been about 25%. Think about that. When we're optimistic, the next 4 months, the next 12 months, the market tends to go up about 4 or 5%. However, when we're most pessimistic, when we think the sky is falling, when we think as consumers, man, this can't get any worse, on average, the market goes up 25% in the next 12 months. So is that a guarantee? No, but just like the sun comes up after every single spring and the day gets longer, days get longer, we think that's what you're starting to see in front of us now. Consumer confidence today is at the lowest level it's been in 50 years. Hear that again. Consumer confidence today is the lowest level it's been in 50 years. Yet consumer spending is still high. We just traveled. A lot of us here in the office have made some trips that have been canceled because of COVID. We're finally getting to take them. People are out spending money, right? So we're frustrated by inflation that makes us not very confident, but at the same time, we're still spending money, and that's the important thing. So again, we get it, but what we'd say is we are horrible predictors of market returns, right? When we get most pessimistic is actually when the best opportunities are out there. As we look forward, I'll end with sort of two different, more thoughtful points we'd like to make here, as opposed to looking at charts. Behavior is so important to your returns and how your plan plays out. Everything else doesn't matter as much. Behavior drives everything. A couple of us here in the office have been reading a book recently called The Psychology of Money. Phenomenal book. Talks about how so much of money is driven by our psychology and our behavioral aspect. Not do you pick the right stock or do you pick the right index? It's how you act, right? Do you save enough? Not do you get the right rate of return? Do you make good decisions when the world is crazy around you? Not did you pick the right stock? And the premise of the book, and the author writes this in there, is doing well with money has little to do with how smart you are and a lot to do with how you behave. This is crunch time. How are we going to behave? And our view is that now is not a time to panic. We get the world around you is crazy. The sky seems like it's falling. But in our view, behavior is important right now. And we want to make sure we make the right behaviors so that, as we've used this analogy, this ball being pushed down underwater, eventually the pressure comes off that ball. We need to make sure you're there to benefit from the potential returns that we saw in the first slide, that when we look forward 1, 3, 5 years from now, we'll be happy we planted those seeds. And to end on a little bit of an interesting note, Napoleon Bonaparte has defined military genius in the past as the man who can do the average thing when everyone else around him is losing his mind. Well, our view right now is let's do the average thing. Let's follow the plan. Let's stick to what we've talked about, right? Let's stick to our principles. Everything around us is going crazy, right? It seems like so many people are losing their mind. Let's do the average thing. Let's do the smart thing. Let's plant those seeds. And yes, we can't guarantee summer's going to come, but guess what? It has every other time before, and we think it will again this time, right? So we get it, right? This has been a difficult start to 2022. It could get worse, but we also think you're starting to see the opportunities emerge that when we look out 1, 3, 5 years from now, we'll be happy with where we are. So hang in there. We're here for you. Questions, concerns, please reach out. But please think of that, right? I think that last quote is that doing the average thing when everyone else is doing crazy things around you can be really difficult to do. But not only to us as that military genius, as Napoleon said, but that's some of the investing genius as well. Behavior trumps what investment you pick. Let's make the right behavioral decisions today. Thank you. We hope everyone has an amazing rest of the summer. Get some traveling in, right? We've all been sort of on lockdown more than we wanted to be the last 2 years. See friends, see family, enjoy the weather. Let us worry about this stuff. And if you have to, just don't open the statements, right? We get it. They've been ugly. But hang in there. We look forward to seeing you soon here at the office. Enjoy summer, and we can't wait to talk with you soon or see you again sometime shortly. Make it a great summer.